Well, hello and welcome to Evening Jesus for Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. And we're spending our week together talking about time. And tonight I want us to chat fairly practically about time and specifically asking the question of how do I get the most out of my limited time? And let me tell you, you don't get the most of your time by adding things to your schedule. In fact, that's probably the worst idea. If you want to get the most out of your time, you've got to learn the art of prioritizing. Because here's the principle. Priority determines your capacity. The priorities of your life determine the capacity of your time, whether it's a day, a month, a week, a season, a year, perhaps even your whole life. But here's the thing, I'm pretty sure that isn't brand new information for most of you. You know that if you spend 8 hours a day on social media watching TikTok or YouTube videos, that you've made a priority of something that isn't going to get you very far or help you accomplish any of the goals you may have in your life. Right? So if priority determines our capacity isn't new information, let me ask you this question. Then why don't we prioritize correctly? Why do we have such a hard time with this? Why does it seem like we're great at wasting time? You know, a friend of mine who passed away a few years ago, his name was Steve. He was very fond of a particular phrase, and it was this, big rocks. He was somewhat obsessed with making sure he was focused on what he called the big rocks of his life. And I think he was onto something, because I think for many of us, we don't prioritize correctly because we've never actually sat down and decided what our big rocks are. Here's the question, what matters most to you? And how are you focusing your time on those things, right? And listen, if you've never done that exercise, I really think you should. Maybe even tonight, just pause, sit down and say, what are my big rocks? What are the most important things in my life? Right? For example, I think you shouldn't be spending what works out to be a full-time job scrolling the internet. I don't think that should be a big rock for you. So what are they? But here's the thing, before you sit down and write out your big rocks, I want to show you something Jesus said, because I think it will help focus your thoughts. Here's what Jesus said. So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. You know, for those of you who've grown up in church or been around church for any length of time, these words of Jesus are probably somewhat familiar to you. But what do they have to do with time? Well, I think Jesus is saying that when it comes to the minutes of the day, the hours of the week, the months of the year, the season of your life, what we've been invited to do is seek first, to put first, to prioritize everything around Jesus and the way of living that he's inviting us into. Jesus is saying that to maximize your limited time, to draw out the potential you've been given in this life, you're to make Jesus the organizing principle around which everything else in your life is organized. Listen, there was a church leader who lived about 500 years ago. His name was Martin Luther, who said that on the days he had the most to do were the days he rose the earliest and devoted more time to prayer. He said that the busier the day was, the more time he devoted to prayer, because that's how he ensured that as he moved through the worries of the day, he never lost sight of the fact this was about doing what Jesus had invited him to do. In fact, here's how Martin Luther summed up his thinking. He said, pray and let God worry. And you know, my prayer for you is that as you learn to make Jesus the biggest rock of all in your life, that you will pray and let God do the worrying. He knows what you need, and he knows how to take care of his kids. Hey, have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.